Roland Reiss is a Los Angeles-based artist and professor emeritus at Claremont Graduate University in California, where for 2 decades he was chair of the MFA program, transforming it into a creative workshop, equal in ambition and innovation to the best institutions out there. He has exhibited worldwide since the 70s and has for over 50 years stood out as an art theorist and explorer who makes risky creative leaps. Roland believes that abstraction is the primary way in which human beings understand their world. He has had the unusual honor of receiving 4 NEA Visual Arts Fellowships and a Lifetime Achievement Award from LA Art Corps. I met Roland at his wonderful artist loft overlooking the downtown LA skyline, where he lives with his wife and fellow artist Don Aerosmith, and continues to investigate the contemporary via his renowned work, which has evolved through many mediums from large-scale sculpture to small-scale design, including his internationally acclaimed quasi-anthropological dioramas, which he's best known for. A major survey of this work became an exhibition traveling from the Los Angeles Municipal Art Gallery onto Arizona, New York, and back to Palm Springs, California. I like this one, which spells out Muse. And yet, soon afterwards, he turned away from this body of work and has now been painting for 20 years, experimenting with how the canvas is variously defined. So do you think art's losing its place in America's zeitgeist?
I don't know how political I should get. You can cut this out in the discussion, but it's very interesting that in the last election, they asked John McCain what he thought about art. He said, well, art is a frill. And a lot of people believe that. And I've run into it over and over and over again. And they asked Obama the same question, and he said, art speaks to the soul of society. There's a contrast in perception of what it is about, And that may be a little severe on McCain, because I think probably the context was, with the problems we have, art's a frill. But Obama has brought up art continually, which is really surprising in the face of all the other problems, that he continues to mention it, because there is this fear that people feel it's a waste, and all the rest of it.
But when you're pursuing creativity, you're doing something very self-absorbed.
Yeah, well, also another dimension of that is that the artist's role challenging society and challenging thinking, and creativity is a measure of the state of the culture. If a culture is continually in a strong creative phase, it means the culture is healthy and it has a great future. And when that stalls, you begin to worry. And I think it's stalling in this culture now for a variety of reasons, and it's hard to determine what reasons are temporary or maybe alterable, and which reasons are more permanent in terms of this phase of development of our culture. I mean, it's a really interesting kind of problem. The point at which I was a student, there was no real expectation you would have a career and make real money. I mean, we knew there were Picasso and Matisse and 20 artists in New York, who were making a living and all that. And for the rest of us, we were dedicated almost like nuns and priests or something to it, or monks, to this profession. We were just going to do it, no matter what. And then as time went along, you begin to see that there's more and more success, and artists are, and me included, beginning to get money for their work, and I always like what one of my old teachers said, there's a thing that keeps you straight, which is artists don't work for money, but they accept money. And that's a very pure way of putting it. We all use money in this world to buy materials and keep going and all the rest of it. Yeah, this is all acrylic on plexiglass, mostly on one side, but on both sides. Painting and color about light. And so this is like pushing the idea of color to an extreme where it becomes... There's a long dialogue about the brush stroke and how it's been exhausted. When we're talking about creativity and things have been done. And so everyone's looked at the brush stroke like it's been done to death. So A lot of us eventually say, oh, no, wait a minute, I'll show you something. I can break new ground here. And one of my references was, in some of the history books where they show pictures of Rembrandt close up, they will photograph it with a raking light. And you will see the brushstrokes jump up at you. And for painters, that's always very exciting to see Rembrandt's brushstrokes magnified. So the idea is that the way these strokes take the light, allow the light to pass through and reflect the light. And actually the painting of these is very physical and very much like dance. So as opposed to the waterfall piece, which is more calculated and more planned and developed, this is really, I only have 20 minutes to do this painting. So there's a lot of preparation with masking tape and drawing and shapes and so on, all of which is going to be peeled up. But after the gel is spread out on the surface, I only have 10 minutes to do this. It's exactly like doing a dance. And it takes me sometimes all morning to get up for it. And I'm exhausted when I get it done because it doesn't permit many errors. It means, because if you start going across in different directions, it just all gets chopped up. An artist who was very important to me, a very famous artist, was Clifford Still, and I remember him saying to me one day, we were having lunch, and he said, every artist has to break out of the shell at a different place. And that was his, metaphor for the fact that he didn't want any imitators, and also that there was a place for each artist to break out. And of course, that there are two sides to that, which is you break out of the shell or you simply discover it's right here all the time. Either way. Creativity means that something happens. Something ultimately is produced. Something is moved. Something is changed. Something in some degree, in some small way, appears in the world that is new. Now, in the hands of artists, this is an interesting issue. Visual artists, it could be, the biggest part of that change could be just some little technical thing, which just completely alters the way something is. It may be a quality of vision. It may be an attitude or an idea that that individual has that informs it. Each individual is ultimately unique, and if you can get in touch with that, that's important. Now, but it's more than just, when I say get in touch with that, it's like, it sounds like you only have to do that once or something. Some of us have come to think that there's not just one voice in us, there are multiple voices. We're very complicated, So it's getting in touch with a number of things, of unique properties and qualities that may occur within us as individuals, and what that composite does, I think that's one of the main reasons artists do it, is that whole collective sense of who one is offered up for others to touch and engage with. And that's what I want from other art. I want to experience that. One of my interests in teaching creative thinking or just teaching making art has been about options. I have to come up with 10 or 12, 15, 20 options for them to consider. You might do this. This is an interesting way to go and so on. I had a student once in Colorado. We had a wonderful game going. He was very bright. He still teaches in Longmont. And he would bring a painting, and he would raise a question about a choice he had to make in the work. And our game was that I would present him with every possible option I could think of in relation to his question. And he would press me, and I would press myself to maybe 100 things. We'd be there all afternoon. I'm thinking of more things and more things, And I would watch his face because he was holding ideas in reserve, and I was like eliminating them because he was honor bound not to use any option that I had thought.
Right. Right.
It was a wonderful game because my part was like chess, and my part was to close out. Think of and close out every possible appropriate or connected option in relation to the work.
Roland Reiss is an academic visionary and pioneer in setting standards in higher arts education. He was honored for this in 2009, receiving the Distinguished Teaching of Art Award from the College Art Association. A peer of his had this to say: "Teachers like this, smart, warm, generous, and talented, are to be prized." His students carry on his legacy as critically and expressively engaged artists, educators, and creative thinkers. Roland retired in 2001 from Claremont Graduate University, but that same year he launched the Painting's Edge program at Idlewild Arts, a 2-week forum in the San Jacinto Mountains that painters and critics say is the best idea exchange of its kind, with some of the world's most influential practitioners and critics. Roland's exhibition record is international, encyclopedic, and is still building momentum. He is shown at the Whitney Museum of American Art, Documenta in Kassel, Germany, and museums in Brazil, Mexico, China, Canada, Italy, Germany, Japan, and Taiwan.
My studio was quite cold when I was doing this, and I had a little space heater and my hand was shaking. And I'm trying to do very careful tones here. And you're trying to do it with your hand shaking like that. It isn't easy.
This is pencil drawing, and you redid it over there?
Did this first and did that afterwards. I told some students once in the summer class for a California state system, I could tell them how they voted in the last election by looking at their art, because that's also there. And they challenged me, and I did. It's not that hard. It's just not that hard. The kinds of choices that are made are all there, because the way they behave in art is the way they behave in their marriage and all kinds of things. It's all the same. So there's something much more elaborate there. Probably one of the main reasons for being an artist for me is to be in dialogue with the world. Be a player, right? And it gets as simple, I keep thinking as I'm getting older, as simple as show and tell. For kids in grammar school, it's like, I say this, see, and of course maybe it's no more profound than that. I was going to say it's more profound than that. I'm not sure it is. I believe art should ultimately, for an artist, become something like breathing, making art. What I call beautiful functioning. And that means you have to get all of your ducks in a row, all the parameters of what you're interested in, your training, some knowledge of technique, all this stuff has to get worked through and exercised and learned about and so on. So that when you finally get to a body of work and a particular work, that all of that's going to be there. And then, as you begin to move in it, you begin to have this experience of losing yourself in the work. And you lose yourself you lose complete track of time. You have no idea, and when you come out of it, it could be 2 hours, it could be 3 hours. You're going to be so exhausted you want to fall on the floor and you don't know why, because you've just been working. And there can be this, and usually is, this exhilarating experience that someone else is doing the work and you're watching it happen. And everything is working perfectly well. And it's like, oh my God, I cannot believe this is happening. My experience of that often is, when I have it, is I just can't help smiling like crazy. I always think, I'm smiling so hard. I'm not laughing, I'm just smiling, and also almost like kind of a detachment where I can't believe my hand is doing this. To me, that is the peak experience.